Hello, good afternoon. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me, and apologies for being slightly late today to start. We've had some technical issues, and also the eagle-eyed among you may look at me and think this isn't Dawn Matthews, Sutton and Kingston's head of HR, Shared and Traded Services. Something urgent has come up in Sutton today. Thank you, John. Something urgent has come up in Sutton today, and so Dawn has asked me to step in and present alongside Paul. Paul and I will do a bit of a double act today. Paul, can I ask you to introduce yourself, and then we'll start our presentation.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Arthur. I work within Sutton, and I am a co-lead for the multi-ethnic network.
Thanks, Paul. So we're going to talk today about our award-winning inclusion and diversity work. And I think it would be remiss of me not to start off by saying that Sutton is an outer London borough. It's a small local authority. But what we are really fortunate for in the EDI space is there is absolute commitment to the EDI agenda across our workforce, across our senior leaders and across our members. So in our current corporate plan, our current workforce strategy, equality, diversity and inclusion is absolutely at the heart of what we do if you look at either of those documents. And what we find that is really helpful in that space is it gives us a mandate for what we're doing. So we are supported by our senior leadership teams, by elected members. The HR and OD service have this as a core part of their work programme. And we're really supported by the trade unions and our staff networks who have made personal commitments on an ongoing basis to provide an inclusive and welcoming environment to work and inclusive and welcoming services to residents. So we have an annual EDI programme which is agreed across our corporate management team, which is the chief executive and strategic directors. It is led and shaped by HR alongside our staff networks. It includes live streams, events, celebrations. We have a programme of reverse mentoring, diverse interview panels, support and learning, and we also respond to anything that comes up through the year, either in our local environment or the world more widely. What we've found is that those diverse interview panels, which complement Sutton's anonymous recruitment practice, mean that there's been a 12% improvement in multi-ethnic candidates being appointed, at 52.6% since the last year. And in the top 3 tiers of the council, the last 5 appointments have been 60% talented Black or multi-ethnic professionals who've come in and made an immediate positive impact. In our most recent survey, 84% of our staff said that they felt the impact of this in terms of Sutton being a diverse and inclusive workplace. 85% said that they felt treated fairly by their manager and colleagues, and 83% said that their manager supports them when things are difficult, personally or professionally. We were the first local authority to achieve Silver Race Equality Matters Trailblazer status, and in that first tranche, there were only 3 in the country who received that. What I'm going to do now is hand over to Paul, who will talk to you about some of the work that the multi-ethnic have driven, and also some of his fantastic work across Sutton as a borough. And what he will outline is the really inclusive and engaging approach that he takes. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Emily. So yes, as I mentioned, I sit within the multi-ethnic network, but we work very much closely as staff networks right across the whole. You know, you have a mixture of the women's network, disability, LGBTQ youth, as well as a range of series of networks. And this continues to be quite diversified in terms of our approach. It's really important to us about being or staff being able to come to work and be themselves, something that we coin being your authentic self, to come to work and feel safe. There's a lot of work that goes into, that psychological safety, staff feeling heard. And as Emily rightly said, one of the most amazing things that we've been able to achieve as a borough is that we have our chief executive, Helen Bailey, sitting at the head of all of our staff networks. That's one thing that gives us a lot of confidence to be able to go forward and challenge a number of these boundaries, to have these very brave and sometimes somewhat uncomfortable conversations, and really push the boundary to really make our staff population feel safe and feel heard. There is a lot of work that has been done across the board in terms of what we do in terms of supporting our schools, particularly. We've managed to really work with our schools in regards to disproportionality and bring down those figures. Last year, we were able to reduce permanent exclusions, particularly of young people from a global majority, from around 40%. This year, we're on par of making a much even bigger impact by bringing that further down by a further 34%. Now that is huge when we sit down and translate that into data. But in Sutton, there are much more of these conversations that we're having between our head teachers, our frontline staff, our families, and our students. And it seems to be resonating with the young people that we work with. We're working very much closer in partnership with our community and voluntary resources. One service that comes to mind is a service called MAPS, where it's an inclusive mentorship piece of work that they do with young people. We've developed a resource with work experience where we're working closely with our schools to try and open up placements, to really keep hope alive for the young people, to really help them think about what their future aspirations could look like, really connecting with the local authority and really try and push those boundaries. We talked about reverse mentoring. I myself have gone through the reverse mentorship myself, where I've worked with one of my more senior leaders and really pushing them and holding them to task. And it's something where, for the first time, where you can actually build down those bridges with your senior leaders and really get to know them on that more humanistic level. It actually has really helped open up the doors for my understanding and build in terms of relationships as well. We've also been looking at our care leavers, which is one of those protected characteristics, and kind of before I even go into that, as Sutton being very proud, going that extra step further, we are aware there's 9 protected characteristics, but we've gone one step further to try and recognize 10 protected characteristics, specifically around how we work to support care leavers. And this initiative, we've called it Aspiring to Thrive. And it is about empowering care leavers in the workplace program. So opening them up with work experience opportunities, working with them on the ground to teach them skills, but just try and go that step further to help them to become functional citizens within in society. As I was mentioning about the schools team's work, there is a lot of work we've done in regards to race equality matters. So engaging the support for young people to have conversations in understanding in terms of their race, identity, belonging, their future aspirations. We've opened up in terms of not only training and developing our staff, going that much further, but also bringing it down to the young person's voices. We've held our third anti-racist youth summit this year, where we've been able to go and take those conversations much further, engage in some of the schools, such as our grammar schools, our Catholic schools, into the conversations. And this has become a much more safe space for our schools, young people, and parents to become involved. Out of this, we've created forums where young people can lead from the front, having now had our very first, what we call youth fest blowout, where basically the young people in the borough led their very own council meeting, by where they had council members from all across the borough listening to their initiatives, listening to their own policies, And from that, that's really opened up further conversations into local forums where young people's voice are actually being heard. This has really embarked the next step in what we now have called the Youth National Framework right across Sutton. This is an enabling young people's voices to be heard much, much more in the point of policy in school programs, in terms of governors, right across the whole of Sutton right now. It's really, really an exciting time for young people. And the feedback that we're getting from young people is actually that they feel like their voice is being heard. And this is something that they've been asking for such a long time. But we know we're at the beginning of this journey, and we know there's much more that we need to go, and we're not stopping there. You know, we've managed to achieve that silver trailblazer. We're going for gold. Why stop there? And that's something about Sutton, you know, even though we're quite a smaller out of London borough, we have high aspirations. And you know, there's a number of initiatives that we're working on right now about self-limiting beliefs, about being your authentic self, how we transpire those conversations between our colleagues within children's social care, but our colleagues also in adult social care, because we really want to tie up all of those kind of gaps that may currently exist that we all are aware about. Emily?
Thank you, Paul. And I mean, I think what's really powerful is the work that Paul has talked about in terms of working with Sutton's community and Sutton's young people. He's gone out with his teams out to them, but also they've come to us. So we developed an inclusive language guide, which was put in place with input from all of our networks across all the protected characteristics to say, this language is outdated. These are things that you should take into account when you're speaking to people, because we heard from our staff that they were nervous about saying the wrong thing. And when we refreshed the guide, because language changes, it evolves, new terms come into play. What we heard from our young people was that there had indeed been significant changes, and they gave us language and examples to use in our most recent inclusive language guide, which is really powerful and really helpful. And we've taken out across our staff across the council. And the thing that is really helpful in the guide and our EDI plan is looking as well. We've focused a lot on race over recent years, but we also look across all of our characteristics because we recognise that everyone is a whole person. No one is one characteristic, and we need to support people across the range. So our women's network are very active. They have a lot of events and activity to support interview skills, career progression, women's reproductive health. They've recently run a live stream for staff to support staff who are either preparing to support a relative who's very ill, or thinking about what they can do in terms of end of life arrangements and what they're calling, it needs to be sadmin, not badmin. So we had a couple of hundred staff came to hear about that. So we're able to adjust each year in terms of what we're hearing from staff. We had a real focus this year in terms of supporting staff who are neurodivergent, and our Inclusive Abilities Network, which was formerly the Disability Network, launched. We worked very closely with a senior corporate management team level sponsor, and we worked with IT colleagues to develop an accessibility and assistive technology website, which has a range of tools for staff to try to support them in their work. And our workforce is just about 1,300 staff. We've had 4,000 hits. So people are using the website, coming back to it, refreshing it. And we found that really powerful. In terms of wellbeing, we've had a focus on men's wellbeing, and we have a men's wellbeing network. We also train 20 mental health first aiders to support and signpost individuals. We've had for some years financial first aiders, which we found really helpful in terms of the cost of living pressures and the experience that all our staff are having in terms of working in an environment where the world around us is becoming more expensive to work. So we agree a programme across the year. We have all of the typical events that you would expect, such as Black History Month. And only last week we had a fantastic event hosted by one of our community groups, talking about the impact that they're having coming into the borough and supporting older people and loneliness. And they've accessed grants from the council so that in our shopping centre they have a shop where the elders in the Black, Asian and multi-ethnic community have somewhere directly to come and speak, access support and signpost. Then we had the most amazing lunch and everyone came together to share information, to talk, and to talk about how they can link in with our other networks. What we do as well, because we very much focus on celebration, acknowledging achievement, celebrating our heritage. We've recently reviewed all of our workforce strategies. So alongside the anonymous recruitment, diverse interview panels, we looked at our policies through the lens of the protected characteristics to make sure that they're inclusive and fit for purpose. But we also monitor how well we're doing. So in terms of the pay gaps, obviously we're legally obliged to monitor our gender pay gap. We're preparing the pay gap as it was at the 31st of March this year. But last year it was at 8.6%, which was a decrease from just over 11% the year before. The disability pay gap was at 1.3%, and that's down from 2.6% the year before. And the ethnicity pay gap was at 7.8%. And again, that was down from 8.6% the year before, because we find that actually that evidence base in terms of what we're doing alongside our staff survey findings, what we're hearing from our staff networks and feeding in, all these things are reported both to committee and to our senior leaders. But our ability to evidence the impact of what we're doing really means that we continue to have the mandate in the work that we're doing. One of the questions that we had in the chat, Paul, was how did we get the chief executive to lead our networks? And she's very, very active across the networks, and we have a monthly Race Equality Action Group working group, which was set up in 2020 after the dreadful murder of George Floyd. And Helen, as the chief executive, said her view was that anyone looking up the organisation could see someone who looked at them at a senior level. With the exception, she was less comfortable of that when looking at race. So she said, in order to show how important that was to her and lend her support, she would attend the monthly meeting. And every year we've said to her, do you want to review the membership? Do you want to review the focus? Do you want to delegate it? We're now 5 years down the line and she continues to be part of those meetings. And we have some really rich discussions around how our workforce are feeling, how we're progressing on our EDI plan and things that are happening in the community and what we can do collectively. I think the strength of bringing the senior leaders in and showing them that direct impact and the impact that they can have and making them feel part of it is a really powerful element of what's driven some of the success at Sutton. I don't know, Paul, sort of as one of the leads for the multi-ethnic network, what's your perspective on that?
I think you couldn't have said it any better, Emily. I think having your chief exec, which is my experience, and having your senior leaders as sponsors, but also proactively involved in the delivery in terms of live webinars, particularly, you know, there's a number of different events that we all have witnessed and experienced. If you know, going back to George Floyd, Sarah Everard, Nicole Smallman, you know, and events since then, you know, Islamophobia, you know, the concerns regarding the flags. There's a number of different events that have happened and continue to happen. And the experience of having our senior leaders being a part of those conversations, not as senior leaders, not as frontline staff, but just as human beings, wanting to understand the impact that these experiences are having, not only on the staff that come to work, but also the community. When they look at the impact that it's having, that staff are traveling from their home to the office and back, when you get involved in those kind of down-to-earth humanistic conversations, it very much creates a very different culture, which is our experience. You know, I feel very motivated and proud to have the chief executive that we have, because she very much leads from the front, and she continues to champion all of us within the staff network to go that much further, whilst also acknowledging the importance of the time that all of us give up in trying to continue the motivation and the work that behind it. And, you know, because of that, you know, I sit at the EDI panel for the teaching partnership at Kingston University, and it's something that we've been speaking about. So it's such a really important question about how we got our chief executive. I can say it wasn't us that got our chief executive. She very much led from the front and recognized the need. And we're doing some work with Kingston University about how we can continue supporting our chief executives right across nationally, because we know that's they have a massive portfolio, and to give up that time to be able to encourage and motivate like that, you know, is something that I'm hoping that we can encourage and entice more of those kind of conversations that we can share from Sutton's experiences and we can share with our partners. But it's a really great question.
Thank you, Paul. There was another comment in the chat from Sarah Astle, and I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, saying that you had a speed dating type event to match sponsors to the Right Staff Network group, which sounds like a fantastic idea. What we have found is we have a series of events throughout the year. I mean, I think I've read recently that sort of Black History Month isn't just a thing to have in October, it is through the year, and we do have a range of events and activities across the protected characteristics through the year. It's very much a regular event, but actually those events where you bring people together in a celebratory way is a really positive way to engage. And when people get to know each other, there will always be difficult times, there will always be difficult conversations, difficult things happening across the world. But those connections and those interactions mean that you bring with you an understanding of each other, and that you're coming with positive intent that allow you to have those difficult conversations when you need to. And things like the Black History Month event, and we always have a big event for Staff Network Day, and all of our staff networks come and speak, and typically the leader comes, the chief executive comes, directors across the council come, and we have a lot of people sign up to our networks then. So that kind of ongoing positive lens to look at the EDI activity is really helpful. And I think it's challenging with some of the coverage, the media coverage, some of the things happening around the world. And I think that kind of consistency and being really clear that you continue in the work that you're doing, because for us it's a fundamental part of our corporate plan, it's a fundamental of our workforce strategy, and it's part of the DNA of Sutton. We want everyone to feel safe, included, able to do their best work at Sutton because they're in an environment where they feel supported. So I'm conscious that Paul and I have spoken at you for half an hour. If anyone has any other questions, then we're really happy to answer any questions, have any conversation in the chat. So we'll just pause and give anyone space who wants to come in. Okay, well, I can see no questions coming up, so I will take it that Paul and I have stunned you all into silence. I hope that it's been helpful to hear from us, and equally, if anyone wanted to reach out through the PPMA and have any further conversations, then we're really happy to share anything that might be helpful, or if you've got ideas that you think that we could take on board, we're always really keen to learn from anyone. But I think in that case, from Paul and I, it's a huge thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.